The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. Me and my producer are fighting over the buttons here on StreamYard. As you saw the banners glitch off and on. Thanks, man. My co-host with me as usual, AJ Applegarth. What is up, man?
Hey, what up? I'm not fighting over buttons.
Yeah. I don't give you that privilege for good reason.
Yeah, because you'd lose.
Okay. All right, man. So we have a good guest on tonight for our NL Central preview for the 2021 fantasy baseball season. Let's just jump right into it and bring him on. And hey, Blair, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Blair Williams is a writer for Razzball. Pitcher List. He's also author of his own book, Making Japan's National Game, A Cultural History of Baseball in Japan. Tell us a little bit about that, man. That's actually kind of fascinating.
So my previous life was in academia. I have a PhD in Japanese history, master's in the history of science and technology. So basically my book that eventually did come out of my Japanese history degree was basically the first history of baseball in Japan from 1872, the introduction, all the way to 2008. And you can take a look at it on Amazon or the link in my Twitter profile at Everywhere Blair if you want to learn more about Japanese history and the game of baseball in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll throw the link on there in the show notes too for you. You can let me know if you want the Amazon one or the one that's in your profile or not. But yeah, so it'll be there for you guys to check that out. So we do a segment every week, and it's called Beer of the Week, and we will let you you said you want to partake in that this week with us, and I appreciate that. So let's get it going. AJ, you want to do your sound effect?
Beer.
Good one. I don't know if I'll ever go back to the other one.
All
right, Blair, you are the guest of honor, so go ahead and let us know what you're sipping on tonight.
All right. Well, originally I was going to start with rum because I'm kind of known for rum, but as I was listening to the recent episodes to make sure I was caught up. You're like, oh yeah, beer. So I got my cheap Wisconsin beer. Got to bring it into camera. Leinenkugel's Original. This is the finest 50-cent per can lager that you can find in the middle of Wisconsin.
Nice.
And it's the kind that the locals will say that you crush. And it's actually pretty good. So I have cases of this, but what the people, the fine refined people want to know, of course, is which rum I'm drinking. And right now it's Diplomatico from Venezuela, Mantuano, which is the cheaper little brother to the Exclusiva Reserva. If you ever are out and you see the Diplomatico Exclusiva Reserva, it is excellent. It's a little bit sugary, but I've got my little fifth right here. Maybe it's a large finger, and this is my true thing that I enjoy drinking is rum.
Hey, we do not discriminate for alcohol. So you go do your thing, man. AJ, what you got?
All right. So tonight I am starting off with a Jailbreak Brewing Company Clearly Righteous West Coast style IPA. Not a real heavy hitter here, 6.7, so a little lighter for what I guess I'm used to drinking. But it's good, man. It's real smooth, and I don't know. I had a West Coast IPA not too long ago that was not very good. And this one definitely is much better. So
I feel you on the West Coast ones, man. They are more miss than hit. It feels like for some reason. I don't know why. So, anyway, I am drinking a True Respite Super Trooper hazy IPA. I bought it just for the can. Honestly, I didn't even really care what the beer was. Obviously, phenomenal movie, phenomenal beer. It's actually later for me as well. I've been up there in the 8s and above for the last few weeks. I feel like this is a 6.9. I think I gave it like 3 3/4. Yeah, nice, huh?
This one's a Gronk ABV.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Let's jump into it. NL Central preview. But first, we do have some kind of, not breaking news. This came out a couple of days ago. Carlos Carrasco, he's been shut down for the next couple of weeks at least with elbow soreness. I mean, to me, this just screams, avoid, run for the hills. Like, I don't want anything to do with him. Blair, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, 3 things. It's whether you've already drafted him, are in the process of an ongoing draft, or you have not yet had your main drafts. If you already drafted him, which I think, Joe, you're in the situation there, right?
TGFBI. First pitcher, too. I waited.
Yeah, you got to be nervous because elbow soreness in spring training. Of course, every athlete's going to be a little bit sore, but of course, in the situation of recovering, basically, he had leukemia. I believe 2019. Cancer does do a number on your ligaments, and of course, the treatments that go with it. We're seeing, of course, the wonky 2020, where a lot of pitchers were hurt in 2020. And now we're coming into 2021. You gotta treat this with kid gloves. If you've already drafted him, mentally, I would be preparing for the next waiver wire, fab, what have you. Get your highest priority pitcher that you can, because for a lot of teams, Carrasco was either SP1 or SP2. So he's very important, and you got to recover from that if he misses time. If you're in the middle of a draft, you got to look at it like, every single draft, every single team, somebody's going to get hurt somewhere on your team. Just treat it like, hey, I know he's already somewhat hurt. I can be more aggressive at the end of this draft. And you can pick up some players that you may not have otherwise wanted to do. So go grab them. And if you haven't drafted yet, stay away.
Yeah, I'm definitely not targeting him in any drafts coming up unless there's like really good news all of a sudden, in the next couple of weeks, but I'm not expecting that. But yeah, you're right. The first TGFBI waiver run, I'm going to have to go pretty hard after a pitcher. Although, it'll be early, so I don't know who I'm going to drop. Like, unless they say he's out for the year or, something like that, I don't know what I'll do. I drafted the guys I like, and I've got depth, so I can, slide some people in. But it'll be interesting for sure. I have the I put a hex somehow on pitchers that I drafted TGFBI. Last year I drafted Sale and Clevenger. That was not good. They might have wanted
out of my book.
It's just bad, man. I feel like the first year in TGFBI I got pretty creamed by injuries too. I have not done very well because of partially because of that reason, but yeah, not great. So all right. Let's jump into the division preview here, and we're going to start with the Cubs. So what we do here, Jeff, is we'll break down, we'll run through a bunch of the newcomers to the team. We'll run through the projected batting lineup and rotation, and then we'll jump into 3 questions about each team, usually kind of player-based. So newcomers to the team for the Cubs, we got Jock Peterson, Austin Romine, Eric Sogard, Jake Marisnick, Jake Arrieta, Zach Davies, and Trevor Williams. Jock Peterson sort of interests me. I mean, I know he's going to be in sort of a platoon role because, he can't hit lefties or righties to save his life. But it's, what's your expectations here with Jock Peterson in the Cubs?
Well, at Rasball, we're never known for going quietly into the night on a player. And Jock Peterson is one of the players that we're actually going in pretty hard on this year. There's a good chance. I think RosterResource has him about hitting 5th, kind of in the main lineup, which is great. 5th or 6th, actually. I should say 6th. I believe he's going to kind of slot in above Javier Baez. And He's definitely a late round outfield value. I think in most standard leagues, if you have listeners who are kind of doing the traditional 12-team mix, Jock Peterson is kind of your end of game dart throw because there are many other players with guaranteed playing time who aren't platooning, who are probably going to be on a better team, something like that. But for your deeper leagues and what we're talking about here, TGFBI or Raz Slam, where you have 5 outfielders, or best ball, NFBC cut lines, I don't want to say he's essential, but he's a great upside pick, especially where he's going. Usually somewhere between 150 to 200 or so.
You know, my worry with a player like him, and yeah, you know, he's got the upside. I know he's got the power. You worry because in like a weekly lineup league like TGFBI, and I know you can swap on Fridays, but you know, if it's a weekly lineup league, like you might get stuck in a week where he might play 3 times. That might be a little off, but you know, that's the risk you take with him in those leagues. In a daily transaction league, absolutely, I'm all over him. The home run potential is huge for him. But I mean, like, is there any difference there in your draft strategy with a Jock Peterson type of player between the different types of leagues, or are you just all in regardless?
I mean, for me, of course, I'm always all in. Ultimately, with daily leagues, I mean, for me, I should say there are some people with daily leagues who really focus on the matchups. Of course, they want to find the favorable pitcher matchups. They want to find the favorable parks, and they kind of overthink it. And sometimes, of course, that backfires. I'm not in that school of thought. I prefer my daily leagues to just kind of be enjoyable, and you want to have players that can play every day. If you're resorting to somebody like, say, Jock Peterson, who's a little bit platoonish, so to speak, but playing more regularly on a bad team, if that's a good way of putting it. You know, he works out for daily, but of course in weekly leagues, just like you said, that can also happen to a number of different players, especially in this kind of COVID era. There are a number of situations, whether we call it load management, COVID management, what have you. There could be a lot of players who just don't play as much as they used to.
Yeah, that's very true. Definitely something to consider there. All right, so let's jump into the projected lineup here. We got leadoff Ian Happ. Second is Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, Kris Bryant. Then your man Jock Peterson, Javier Baez, Jason Hayward, and then Nico Horner is projected to be number 9. The starting rotation, we're looking at Kyle Hendricks, Jake Arrieta, Zach Davies, Alec Mills, and Trevor Williams, with the closer potentially being Craig Kimbrell. I guess it's what's going to happen to start the year, at least. So, AJ, go ahead with the first question, man.
All right. Well, we mentioned his name a couple times here, Mr. Javi Baez. I mean, look, his season last year was pretty awful. Batted only .203, had just 8 homers, struck out a ton at nearly 32% of the time. I mean, how much, if at all, are you buying into a bounce back season for Javi in 2021?
I mean, so with Baez, we're kind of looking at a person who's got a pretty good track record, considering. I mean, basically been full-time starter since 2016. I mean, absolutely everything you said, AJ, is correct. I mean, just to give listeners a specific example, 2019, his walk rate was 5%, 2020, 3%. K percentage went from 27.8 to 31.9. ISO dropped a ton. He went from positive 11 runs on his runs above replacement in 2019 to negative 13. I mean, that's 20 runs difference. That's amazing.
Swing.
But kind of when you look, down the peripherals, everybody scrolls down on Fangraphs, and we look at the plate discipline and we see where he's swinging at stuff. It's roughly in there with career averages. Definitely swinging strike rate a little bit increased, but it's not like he's had problems with contact before. 273, 290, 281 coming into the majors, basically his full season numbers. For me, I'm kind of buying into a bounce back on Javi Baez because he typically, especially at his age, I mean, right now, what is he? Just specifically, I don't want to get it wrong. 28.
He's going on 28. Yeah, his
28.
prime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolute prime, absolute steal. Probably at the ADP is going right now. So
yeah,
I'm buying the buyback or the comeback.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I worry about is like we saw a little bit of, we saw the regression from 2018 to 2019. You're talking about the offensive WAR dropping significantly from 2019 to 2020. It went from 28.5 to 11.7. I mean, that's another massive drop.
Yeah,
so he's a very aggressive hitter, and like so if he doesn't make the contact, it's gonna affect him. And clearly, last year finally caught up to him. I mean, people were kind of calling for that in 2019, and it sort of happened, but he did enough to not be a totally worthless in 2019, but 2020 was bad. Yeah, I am too, buying a little bit of the buyback, bounce back as well, but I'm cautious a little bit. I'm not going to go reaching for him, drastically from his ADP currently. Next guy here who had a bit of a breakout last season, Ian Happ. He finally played he finally played a full season again. Right. He did it in his sophomore season, but it didn't work out. And then he got jerked around in the lineup a bunch and called down in the next year. Never really got a chance to kind of get into the flow of things, I felt like, in 2019. But in 2020, new management, they gave him the chance, and he played very well. 258, 361, 505 slash line, 12 home runs, 27 runs, and 28 RBI. I mean, can this guy improve even more off of last season? Or, especially now that he was announced as the leadoff hitter for the Cubs just a week ago. I mean, or are we going to see him kind of regress back to what he was before?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to start with a comparison because I'm from Minnesota, and if you're from Minnesota, you probably remember Michael Kadire. Michael Kadire was a first rounder who was kind of pushed around in a lot of different positions, playing first, third, right field, left field. It's a similar story to Ian Happ that you're hearing right now. I'm looking back at his playing history. He's played everywhere but shortstop and catcher, and of course pitcher. He was kind of brought into the majors without a true position, and now last year he was put into the outfield, and we're seeing him thrive a little bit more. Because kind of once you know where your position is going to be on the field, where you're going to go out there every day, you tend to do better. And that was the case for Michael Kadire. He earns a batting title once he knows he's going to be going out to the outfield every day. Right. Sort of using that as a comparison, of course, not apples to apples, but at least history to modernity, we see Ian Happ kind of having the same trajectory in that a lot of his numbers are consistent with major league averages. They're getting a lot better. I mean, we're seeing agreement amongst the major projection systems, basically 23 to 26 home runs, around 80 runs in RBI, perhaps 10 stolen bases at most. I mean, he's got positive base running scores every year. There's upside there. So I'm definitely thinking he can continue it. And if he stays at the top of the lineup, he's not really a prototypical top of the lineup kind of guy, but he's got a huge walk rate last year. If he continues that, yeah, he'll be up top and he'll be doing well.
I love the Michael Kadire reference. He was one of my favorite, like, just plug and play guys every year. I would target him and just have such great position eligibility with him for a long time. So beautiful reference there. But yeah, I mean, looking at Happ, I love the fact that he is in the leadoff spot. Obviously, he's going to get all the at-bats, more at-bats throughout the whole season. So he's going to have more of a chance to help you out stats-wise, counting stats, everything. And yeah, I mean, if he's going to keep increasing that walk rate, they're going to keep putting him on base. Maybe the steals could come. I don't know. I mean, he's still only 26, so you gotta take what you can get, and steals are kind of few and far between. Regardless, I mean, he's not a big runner, but he did have eight stolen bases back in 17 and 18. So maybe he gets back into that.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I've been kind of pushing him up, in every article, every podcast, every whatever I can get on about, kind of sleeper guys, because I think he's really undervalued right now. He is starting to climb. I'm starting to notice him climb finally. People are starting to pay attention. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I actually think there's 30 home runs in his bat potentially. That's obviously a high projection, but I think it's not out of the question. He was well on pace for that last year. And I get it. It's short season, but the fact that he was on pace for it means it's not out of the question. So I think it's definitely a potential.
The other thing I was going to mention too, the average is average,
but
low average,
fine.
but it's good enough. And his slugging percentage has been over 500 3 out of the 4 years he's played in the majors. So I agree 100% with the power aspect of it, and that 30 homer bat. I could see that happening. So, all right, moving on here. Talk about another horrendous play of Kris Bryant. Horrible 2020. Had only 4 homers. He slashed 206, 293, 351. I mean, that's just pitiful and miserable combined. This is after he's coming off a 31 homer season in 2019, but his ADP's slammed all the way down to 114. So, I mean, is he a steal at this price, or are you still kind of avoiding him at this point?
I mean, he's, still treated as what he used to be in many ways. People used to love him. He was kind of considered this early round fantasy pick, not necessarily first, second round, but, kind of somebody that you want to grab at least by round 5. And you look at the numbers and they're getting worse every single year. Overall contact percentage is down to 50% last year. Swing strike rate, 13%. His barrel percentage was 5.5%. I mean, do you really want that out of a power hitter?
Yeah, it's pretty abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, that's abysmal. He's on his 5th straight year of hard hit percentage under 40%. That's not stellar whatsoever. We're seeing the launch angle hanging out in the 17s, 19, 20, which, especially if you're not hitting it hard and you're not hitting it on the barrel, those are going to end up as pop outs. They're going to end up as fly outs, which we saw last year with the 206 batting average and 4 home runs in 150 at bats. That's not great. So I haven't been touching him in any format this year.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be nearly as bad as last year. I think he's better than that. But I've been attacking third base earlier than him, so that's why I've been off of him. I mean, if I was waiting, I think he'd be a guy that I would potentially look at, especially at his ADP, because at that point, I mean, I don't even really know what's going around him. I don't have the ADP up right now, but it's not. I'm assuming where he's going, it's you're not getting a whole lot, and he does have the upside of a 31 home run season and a over 100 run season before that, and he's been up there in the 100 RBI range before, so he's got that upside. But I've just been attacking third base way too early in the leagues I've done so far for me to be targeting him, and I kind of think that's what I'm going to keep doing, because I don't like that range of third baseman. I think they all have a lot of holes in their bat for me to want to roster them. So.
Yeah. The interesting thing with Bryant too is just looking, solely at last year, which again, hashtag 2020, whatever you want to call it. I mean, versus lefties, he was at 286 with the average, and he was terrible against righties at 184. Yet he hit all 4 of his homers against righties. So I don't know. I mean, he clearly had about 3, almost 4 times as many at bats versus righties too. But I think there's a bit of a bounce back coming for him. I don't know if I'm buying in 100% yet. But if he's fallen where he is and I need a third base, I'm not necessarily against taking the risk on him. Again, it would depend on who else is out there. And who's
Jeff
going
just put it.
around him.
Jeff just put in our chat: Chapman, Edman, Hayes, and Urshela. I mean, honestly, I'd probably think about it. Those are guys that I'm not loving. Maybe Matt Chapman at best. Or the rest of those players are just kind of guys, in my opinion. So, those are I'd probably take Bryant over all of them except maybe Chapman. So,
okay.
All right.
Well, moving into the Cincinnati Reds. New to the team, we have Dr. Sean Doolittle, Jeff Hoffman, and Dee Gordon. All right, I mean Dee Gordon. That's interesting. What's your take on Dee Gordon coming into Cincy here?
This was a joke.
I know.
I've got him in a dynasty league because I inherited the team, and the previous manager put him on a ridiculously long contract.
Oh no!
But it's like great. I've got bases covered for a while.
That's like the Orioles having Chris Davis.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Not to deviate from NL Central, but when you're taking over a dynasty league, you gotta understand like somebody might take over your team. So be kind to them. Don't put the players on 5-year contracts and 10-year contracts.
So interesting enough, Fangraphs has his name as D Strange - Gordon. I mean, that's strange in itself. I never knew that was part of his name.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I just
all right. So
skip that part.
Yeah. All right. So going back to the actual projected batting lineup here for the Cincinnati Reds, we have Jesse Winkler in left field leading off, Nick Castellanos, Joey Votto. Potentially, he's currently on the COVID list, but he should slot back in at the 3-hole. Eugenio Suarez, Mike Moustakas at second base in the 5-hole, Nick Senzel, Kyle Farmer, Tucker Barnhart, and then the starting rotation, we've got Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, Tyler Male, I'm going to go with that. Wade Miley and Michael Lorenzen. So interesting lineup of pitchers there. And then projected closers, we have a committee of Amir Garrett, Lucas Sims, and again, Dr. Doolittle.
All right, jumping into the first question here. So we'll jump into that starting rotation. And, the Reds aren't really projected to be a good team, so wins might be a struggle here. But Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray are going pretty early in drafts, and they've got the numbers and the strikeouts to back it up. But I mean, in a wins league, do you bump them down a bit when you're drafting because they might not get as many as some of the guys are going around them?
I mean, I don't because wins are fluky.
Yeah,
I know if you've been around long enough that it's kind of the mantra is that we need to get rid of wins in fantasy baseball, replace them with quality starts, and of course, quality starts can also be pretty wonky too.
Quality starts going away too because nobody goes 6.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have a standard roto league or a standard head-to-head league, wins is almost guaranteed to be part of that. And sure, maybe you throw in some Yankees starters or some Dodger starters and you bump them up marginal a little bit. But for me, for the most part, I mean, I remember back as a Twins fan when our middle reliever Juan Rincon in like the mid 2000s had 8 wins.
Nice,
a guy good. Who pitched only. Yeah, I mean, wins.
Moneyball reference.
Yeah,
I'm not worrying about wins at all, and I am all in on Castillo. He's one of my. It was either 5 or 6 on my starting pitcher list. Sonny Gray's in the top 20. I'm all in on them, and I don't care about wins. I want to see them striking out batters, which is what they do.
100% agree, man. You can't chase wins. No. And it's funny, you can't like I was just saying, you can't chase quality starts anymore either, unfortunately, except for like the top maybe 15 guys, and then after that, it's like, well, I'm hoping they'll go 6. You know,
Yeah.
with even some of them, they might not, but whatever.
Yeah, and Castillo, I mean, you're looking at over a strikeout per 9 for the last 2 years, and hovering. Well, he was still over 9 in 2017 too, and right under it in 18. So the Ks are going to be there for him. I'm not really worried about his performance and whether or not he's going to get wins. I think he's a strong enough candidate to keep Cincy in the game if their offense can get him a few runs, and then the bullpen with the 18 closers they have should be able to make it through 3 innings, you would think. And then Sonny Gray is interesting as well, just because of how his career has been. I mean, this is a guy who came in as such a highly touted pitcher, and it just never showed up for the longest time. And then finally he starts playing pretty well. His first year in New York, full year in New York in 18 is pretty solid, 11-9, pretty much followed that up about the same in Cincy in his first year there in 19. So his K rate also, since he's been in Cincy, over 9 Ks per inning, or K per 9. So
10.
Yeah, over 10, over 11 last year. So I think Sonny Gray has finally found his groove here, and he's somebody that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. So considering the power alone that this player has at the second base position, is Mike Moustakas actually worth his value at the ADP of 122?
Absolutely. Of course, everything I say comes with the caveat that you need to know how you're building your team. So if you're in a roto league or head-to-head league with categories, eventually you're going to need stolen bases at some point. Oftentimes, right now, second base is a haven for some of those stolen bases. And if you are taking a power hitter at second base, you need to find your stolen bases somewhere else. And sort of a traditionally easy way to kind of hunt for those second base stolen bases is to find Colton Wong, Nick Madrigal, somebody like that at the end of the draft. If you are drafting Mike Moustakas and putting him at second base, you're getting home runs. And so, which case, where are you getting your stolen bases from? You just have to think about that. And if you've thought about that, if you're somebody who started with Ronald Acuna, Mookie Betts, and then you grabbed Bo Bichette at shortstop in the second round, I have absolutely no problem with you taking Mike Moustakas to sit in either your first base or your second base slot, because if you put him in second base, the projected 30 home runs, that's something that basically what Ozzie Albies might be able to do. But there's not a lot of other second basemen that can come close to that. So it can give you an edge in homers, but you do have to be aware that he may hurt you in a different categories. But batting average too, but batting average is fluky.
Yeah. The reason why I like Moustakas so much for the second base position is because he's got that late power. Because what I am finding in drafts a lot is people are going for those power speed combo guys early, but the guys that are getting pushed up the draft exclude, Tatis and Betts and Acuna, and the like top first, second round guys. Those guys are elite. That's a different story. But there's some guys getting pushed up into the third, fourth round even that, have a little bit of speed, and because of that, they're getting pushed up, but they don't have quite the power, that the rest of some other guys are going to have later. And so if you're going to draft those guys and get, your dozen steals or 15, 20 steals from a guy like that, getting Moustakas a little later at second base is fantastic. And that's why I like him so much once he got the second base eligibility, I thought that helped him out so much more. But he was third base only for the longest time, I believe. And then, once he got second base eligibility, I think it skyrocketed his value, but it never really changed. The ADP didn't follow suit. It felt like people just sort of ignore him. And I guess maybe it's because the other counting stats, the runs in the RBI, I don't really follow because of the team he's on, unfortunately. But, I think he's a great value at that price. So,
yeah.
UJ.
I was just going to say the only non-30 homer projection is from Zips, and they're at 28. So still, you're not going to find that kind of a power hitter readily available or just hanging out on the waiver wire later on if you have injuries. So yeah, I definitely think if you can get your other counting stats, especially the steals, earlier on, no problem taking him later.
100%. Yeah. All right, so let's move into this bullpen. We kind of alluded to it earlier. It's a bit of a mix of guys here. It's looking like no clear guy being called out yet. But what's your thought on this bullpen and this closer situation? Is it going to be Garrett? Is it going to be Sims? Is it going to be Doolittle? Do we trust any of them as being targets for your draft?
So, of course, backstory of being with Razzballs, I trust no closer whatsoever. I mean, that's our motto is trust no closer.
Yeah. Do you have to sign that on the contract when you sign with them? Trust no closer.
Yeah. I mean, but I think
that's awesome.
outside of roto, it's or like a roto with an inning pitch limit. Closers are so mercurial and they're so hard, and you can you can do like a little time capsule and look back 3 years. Look back 3 years and think of who are the closers 3 years ago. It's ridiculous. You wouldn't recognize almost any of them other than basically Chapman and Jansen, or Craig Kimbrell, who were just made fun
shouldn't
of.
Be anymore.
Yeah. Sean Doolittle, here he is. It's like he can't win the closing job with the Cincinnati Reds, a team that we're arguing is like, oh yeah, they're not going to win. So I mean, as a fantasy manager, who do I draft out of that? I draft from another team. If I'm super deep in a draft where it matters, I'm probably taking Garrett first because he's kind of the incumbent. Doolittle, I might put second just because he's not brought in to be a middle reliever. He's got the most experience, of course, and I draft him super late in a deep tournament and see what happens. And when Fab comes around, if he doesn't have the job, I cut him. And Sims is, it's kind of a 2A, 2B situation. Sims kind of ends up being 2B for me. And, it is what it is. And sometimes you can never guess those situations. And if I had the mind to guess which closers show up when, I'd be Nostradamus and I'd still be wrong 97% of the time.
Yeah, closers suck, man. Except for like the top 2 or 3, maybe even that. But even then, some of them kind of, fizzled out on you during the season. But yeah, I'm with you. If you're gonna take one late because you've waited on saves, it's Garrett right now. He's probably the guy, and he pitched well last year, so it's hard to not give him the job right away. But I do think this is going to be kind of closer by committee, unfortunately. I do like Sims. Like, his stuff is good, but he is coming off and he's injured right now. He hasn't really started spring training yet. So it's hard to take him unless it's like a super deep league and you can kind of sit on some guys. But yeah. Let's move on to the Milwaukee Brewers. New to the team. Somebody you mentioned already, Colton Wong. Possible leadoff hitter there. We got Travis Shaw, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Brad Boxberger. Sorry, stumbled there. Lineup. Razzball has been loading real slow for me today, so sorry about that. Should have done this earlier. So Colton Wong, Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich, Keston Hiura, Travis Shaw, Jackie Bradley Jr., Orlando Arcia, Omar Narvaez, and then the starting rotation, which is real good: Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, Josh Lindblom, Adrian Hauser, and Brett Anderson. So, and then obviously the closers there. I don't want to forget about them. We got Josh Hader as the closer, and then Devin Williams right there on his heels. So that's solid 1-2 punch, and we'll get to that. But let's first start with Keston Yelich. We've talked about the Cubs, and they had some, Baez and Kris Bryant, go down, have really bad 2020s. But man, Keston Yelich, I mean, he was like the number 3 pick, sometimes the number 1 pick in drafts last year. Oof. Brutal year. K rate went up drastically. Batting average went down. ISO went down. Just everything that could have gone the wrong way did. Are we expecting the full bounce back for him? He's still going in the first round in a lot of drafts. Is this are we expecting him to bounce back fully as he's getting picked, 11th overall, roughly?
I would take him 11th, and I'm fine with that. And I don't want to phrase it like he's the next Alex Rodriguez or, prime career Pujols or prime career Miggy, because, Yelich has 2 premier years under his belt, and that's great. I mean, I wish I had 2 premier years in my life under my belt. And we're seeing
a lot more money.
Yeah, a lot more money. And we're seeing, 2020 was a disaster for a ton of people. Is it necessarily reflective of his career? No, you can see just like you said, Joe, the numbers are wonky. 10% increase in his K percentage, nearly 100-point, I should say 10% drop in his ISO, massive drop in his BABIP. He's a guy who has ridiculously high BABIP because he knows how to hit and he knows where to place the ball. It's not one of those things where he just gets lucky year after year. He knows how to hit, and that's why he was able to have a 336, 373, 355 BABIP, and then we have him seeing, nearly 330 average. I mean, that's like Tony Gwynn levels. Adding steals onto that, we look at the peripherals. We see in 2020 he's still 12% barrel rate, roughly in line with his career average, 55% hard hit, actually the maximum of his career average. There is good stuff going on right there, and I'm happy to take him, even with the worst Brewers lineup at pick 11. And if it might be one of those situations where he has 40 home runs and 60 RBI, who knows? But if it happens, it happens. But I think he's a good player, and I think we can trust him.
Yeah, I think it's too hard to forget and just overlook what he has done when he's been so good. You chalk up what it was, let it go, and he's a value now, in my opinion, where he's going, late first round, early second. Still pretty much where he should be going, in my opinion. But if I'm at the end of the first and he's just continuing to fall, I'm all over it. So moving on here to Keston Hiura. He had a great rookie campaign, but he did kind of disappoint last year, which seems to be the going theme with all of the questions I have here. Like Yelich, his batting average dropped, his K rate went up, his ISO went down. What are your thoughts on a bounce back this year for Hiura?
Yeah, small sample size, and you can insert your own joke there. But, if we put in our combined 2019 home runs, he had 38 home runs between AAA and Major League Baseball. That's all you could ever ask for. The guy's 24 years old. He did 13 home runs last year, crummy batting average, which, again, batting average is wonky, capital key. 34% K rate, which is not in line whatsoever with his historical average. At 24 years old, he's young for being in the league. And at second base, that's premier. Do I get thrilled over him this year, say in a roto or head-to-head? It's very hesitant. I see the projections down here, and everybody, all the big ones, are putting him 28 to 30 home runs, 10-plus steals, 80 runs, 80 RBI. That's pretty aggressive given how bad he is, and especially how mercurial 24-year-olds can be. If you're dynasty, you grab that and you hold on to it, and you do sign it to that bad 5-year contract that I told you just not to do a few minutes ago. But I like Keston Hiura in the long run, and I'm pretty okay with him this year.
Yeah, I like Hiura's upside. You know, I had him in a dynasty league that I'm actually no longer in. I had to orphan that team, but he was like the guy that I went after just because of all of those really nice stats he had in the minors. So I'm looking for him to keep going with it. You know, obviously his K percentage since he's been in the majors has been over 30. You know, definitely up around 35 last year. So if he can take that back down to where he was in the minors, you know, in those mid to low 20s, you know, I think that just screams for more opportunity for him to get on base and just give you those counting stats that you like. I don't know if I see the homer potential as much as these projections. That's pretty bold. Maybe not this year, but I think he's got the ability to get there. I just don't see it this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on the thing that worries me the most is the K rate for him, and if he can't drop that, it's gonna start hurting him in the long run. But you know, he's still going top 6 second baseman right now. I have a tough time grabbing him there for some reason, and I've been wrong before. I could easily be wrong again. I just have a real tough time doing that. But let's jump into this bullpen, and obviously, I mean, this is arguably the best 1-2 punch out of the bullpen that there is in the majors. We got Josh Hader and Devin Williams. You know, Hader did regress a bit last season, but still, you know, saved 13 out of 15, I think, or 13 out of 16. But Williams, I mean, straight up looked untouchable. I mean, at ERA under 1. It's just sick. What's your thoughts on these two for the 2021 season? Like, you know, and kind of, you know, what I'm wondering about is, like, does Hader keep this job?
Yeah, so I mean, Hader, I think, is the second, maybe third reliever going off the board in most drafts.
First still.
Sometimes first.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it all depends. Somewhere between 1 and 3, people trust him, which is kind of weird, you know, given the fact that, you know, he's been basically the main closer for the Brewers, which aren't like a stellar team. He's only been the main closer for 1 year. 37 saves in 2019, you know, main closer last year, I should say, 2020. You know, we never really count 2020. It's, again, saves you cannot necessarily predict.
Right.
It's really hard, and many prediction systems don't actually predict saves, because I know, at least coming from Rasball, our projectionist, to use a completely inaccurate word, Rudy, with Steamer. Steamer doesn't project saves.
Yeah.
It's Fangraph's depth charts that predicts saves. That's why you see all of them having 25. The bat has 0 saves.
Right.
So we're in this realm that there's actually market inefficiency, because nobody knows what Josh Hader will actually do. It's basically sort of giving it up to the inaccurate science of ADP and people just kind of guessing what's going on. We know that Josh Hader had some personal problems. He seems to believe that not everybody was created equal, and he dealt with that a little bit last year. He seemed to come out with it better than some other people, but it did seem to stress him out, especially as he took the mound. Devin Williams, meanwhile, you know, he became the darling of Pitching Ninja. We're watching his pitches, just they're nuts. They're you know, it's kind of like watching a Marvel movie. Just, you know, you almost believe that there's CGI going on, because they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Is he the real thing? I mean, he's got 40 innings, 43 innings 40 innings at the major league level. That is small sample size, basically, as it gets. Can he maintain it? Hopefully, if he turns out to be the next Dennis Eckersley, Lee Smith, you know, great. In that case, greatness wins out and shows that it's going to be the thing But until then, we all know that there's a hierarchy in the bullpen, and we know that Josh Hader at least has demonstrated the closer mentality for a while. He's going to keep it unless he gives a significant reason to lose it. So again, I come from a place where we don't draft Josh Hader in Rasball.
No,
but I mean, can I full-throatedly recommend him given people like Aroldis Chapman or Kenley Jansen? I know there's so many marks against Kenley Jansen, but the guy's held on in the closer position for so long. You know, we look at Josh Hader, you know, technically 1.5 full years. You know, shrugging emoji.
Yeah, Hader's an interesting case for me. I have owned him in redraft leagues, and I have, you know, gone after him early because I wanted that lockdown. You know, this is the guy. There's not as many of them around anymore. You know, you pretty much nailed it there, Blair, with Jansen and Chapman, and Kimbrel was, you know, in an Atlanta jersey, maybe. Hader just, I think he was just overworked too early. I mean, they had no issues throwing him out there for 2 innings every other day, it seemed like, you know, the 1 year. And it's just like, wow, okay. I mean, and it's great in a points league, especially when I'm getting, you know, 3 outs or 3 points per,
I'm in a
per
points
inning.
league.
And I'm like, okay, I'm all over this. And then it's like, well, wait, he hasn't pitched in like 3 days. What the hell's going on? Oh, well, he finally blew a save. Oh, and now they're putting this other person. And it just, I think that they overworked him personally. And Williams is electric. So
I don't disagree.
I think it could easily, you know, change hands and then come back to Hader and then change hands again and then come back to him. So I think they just got to decide what they want to do. If they want him to be the closer, leave him in your 9th inning. Don't mess with his head and his arm anymore. Just make him the closer and stick with it. Or if you're going to make him a 2-inning guy, throw him in the 7th. I mean, you have before. So, you know, but just pull him before shit just gets too bad. And
Can't have a lot more of these like 35, 40 pitch outings where and then try to have him go out 2 days later and do the same thing. It's just, it was a lot. I agree.
Yeah, especially in a weekly league. I mean, that just F's you the entire week. If on a Monday he goes in and it's like, oh, well, we're going to put him in for 2 innings. And then he's not going to pitch again
until Saturday.
Like, great. Thanks for the innings points, but you gave up a homer on Saturday and took the loss. Yeah, it just cancels itself out. So anyway, let's move on. Pittsburgh Pirates. We got the yellow helmet here over my co-host's shoulder. New to the team. Oof.
Well, I had old school Brewers too, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. The Robin Yount Brewers hat right there.
Got the yellow Pirates. I got the black one too, but this was cooler.
Yeah. So new to the team. I mean, we got to just stop right here and talk about Todd the Bod Frazier for a few minutes. No, we don't. I love Todd Frazier.
I wrote down one name and went, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
There's nothing to talk about here.
Frazier and his
got a cool name, I guess.
With the Cincy team was my dude. Like, I was all over Todd Frazier. Like, I don't know. I there's so many different references I could make that I won't, because this is a family show. Or so I've been told.
No, it is not.
Here, let me drink my beer. I've been told. All right, so let's just jump into the lineup here. If I can actually get it to come up. Okay.
Yeah, all right. I remember bringing these up earlier.
I had it
slow for some
sitting
reason
there, and I was like, "Great, never mind."
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll come back to that. Brian Hayes basically is the lone star in this lineup. So, just what do you think we can expect from him in 2021? He's only had 95 plate appearances, albeit they were very good plate appearances in the majors, but his ADP is sitting at 142. What are your thoughts on Hayes?
Well, I see Jeff put in the chat that Trevor Cahill is coming to the Pirates, and that changes everything.
Oh, man.
Hold on. Let's go back to new to the team. We now have a talking point.
I cool myself down, man. That's hot news.
I mean, yeah.
Nope, still don't care.
Can we just call them TNT at this point? Because they're going to blow up with Todd and Trevor. I mean,
oh, no.
Which way are they going to blow up, though?
It might implode.
Kris Bryant Hayes.
Anyway.
Your thoughts?
I mean, I think Brian Hayes takes him probably to the World Series and then to the Olympics, and there's fireworks and explosions after that. Because with Trevor Cahill on the roster, it's done. But it's
gonna win the World Baseball Classic with the Pirates.
Didn't Cahill put the John in Tommy John? I mean, why is this breaking news, Jeff?
It's not. He's fun of us. Making fun of it in general and us, I guess.
I mean, I've seen Kris Bryant Hayes go earlier than that, and it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
the depth at third base. I mean, just to give you an example from like Rad Slam, I drafted Rafael Devers in the second of Rad Slam. It's a 12 team because I love Devers and I wasn't going to let him go. And then Nolan Arenado, Stolenado from the Rockies to the Cardinals. I got him in the 5th, and so I was full up on my, of course, 3B and corner infield spots. And I started looking down the draft list, and third base is deep this year. And our projectionist, quote unquote, Rudy Gamble, was like, "Why did you go for Arenado? There's so many good third basemen out there." And a lot of people are targeting Kris Bryant Hayes in sort of what we talked about before, the Chapman, Edman, Urshela tier. Of course, are the stonks high? Is he GameStop? Sure. Can you make a profit off of Kris Bryant Hayes right now? Absolutely. Is the sample size as small as it gets? Man, I mean, he's got 480 at bats in AAA and not even 100 bats in the minors. He's still a prospect. If you're in a dynasty, he's still a rookie. Basically, every single format. Hey, that's valuable if you're in a dynasty or something that considers that rookie. Absolutely. If you are in a redraft, I think you're looking at a lot of hype when you look down at his consensus rankings. 15 home runs, 70 runs in RBI, a handful of stolen bases. There's a lot of players that will give you that. Of course, we look at his minor league career, hitting 263 in 2016, 278 in 2017, 293 in 2018. Two of these, I should say 1 year, 2018 is exceptional in weighted runs created plus. There's nothing that like jumps off the page that this is the next Christian Yelich or next Nolan Arenado, anything like that. He's going to be very good. We're going to roster him. We're going to enjoy him from a fantasy and a real life standpoint for a long time. But you do not need to overpay for him at a Matt Chapman, Tommy Edman price.
100% agree. I don't know. You said third base is pretty deep. I get it. Like I feel like from like a power standpoint, it's pretty deep. But like as an overall player standpoint, like it pretty much drops off after like Rendon, and if you want to include like Bregman and Arenado in there, just because they've done it before. But like I'm kind of afraid of them a little bit. I'd much rather grab the Ramirez, the Machado, the Devers, the LeMahieu's, and hope that and rely on them the whole year than the rest of the guys. And then once you get past like Arenado, like man, I'm kind of scared with third base. Like a lot of these guys are just sort of iffy, and honestly, like a lot of these guys at third base, like have multiple position eligibility. Like I'd rather have them play those positions and snag one of these top tier third basemen. That's the way I've been playing it. But yeah, I 100% agree with Hayes. I have him ranked a lot lower. It feels like than most people, and especially where he's being drafted. Like I mean, I've done even industry drafts, TGFBI and Wrestling. I've seen Hayes go off the board, and I'm like, whoa, I was looking like 5 rounds later for him, and he's just flying off the board. Like McNeil's another one of those guys that people are just like in love with this guy. He went in the 3rd round in TGFBI, and everybody was like, man, I thought I liked McNeil. But Hayes is sort of up there too, with that sort of love. Like somebody will reach for him in your draft. So if you're that guy, good luck. But if you're not that guy and you like Hayes, you're not going to get him. But and I don't think it's a big deal if you don't, because you're right. He's just a guy, in my opinion, like 15-10, 15-9. Whatever.
I mean, so you could get that out of the multi-eligible, position-eligible Todd Frazier. I mean, but I do have the lineup up, so let me just run through that real quick.
Yeah, I forgot
we got Frazier and Hayes. We got Colin Moran, Brian Reynolds in cleanup, Gregory Polanco, Anthony Alford, who's an interesting player in my mind. Jacob Stallings, Kevin Newman, and then pitching we've got Steven Brault, Chad Kuhl, Tyler Anderson, Mitch Keller, and Trevor TJ Cahill.
All right.
So
floor
is yours.
Richard Rodriguez. Great 2020. Not a lot of save to show for it, unfortunately, and probably not a bunch this year either. But over 13K per 9, below 3 ERA, FIP and XFIP are right there with that. Walk rate was below 2. Again, led to 4 saves. I mean, is he a closer that you would consider, taking a late chance on in drafts? I mean, he's going in like the mid 200 ADP range. I mean, somebody at the back end of your draft just going like, I need possible saves. Click.
Yeah, if you are in a 12-team roto, 12-team head-to-head categories, absolutely. End of draft, he's kind of there with the Daniel Bards, the Rockies closer, his quote-unquote closer.
Right.
Teams that, I mean, I remember back to I was going to say when the Tigers were bad, the Detroit Tigers were bad. They were monumentally bad like a year and 2 years ago. So I'm talking like 10 years ago when they had Todd Jones. Like the Tigers before Miggy came into town were monumentally bad. And they had basically this mustachioed closer, Todd Jones, that was not a great pitcher, but he racked up the saves because he had the opportunity and there was no competition. We're kind of looking at that too. I mean, I'm looking at the Pirates bullpen. I mean, there's nobody's going to compete. And if they do compete, they're going to compete in like, a week time span because they're going to walk 7 batters and they're going to get knocked around. And the Pirates, they're not competing this year. They're going to need somebody that they can at least, stonks to the moon. If they can get Richard Rodriguez to notch some saves under his belt and look good and trade him off for something else, of course, they're going to do that.
Yeah, that's the one where I have with him is the fact that he could get traded mid-season. But I think in a year-long roto league, getting even saves as early is, as few as he may get, it matters. And you brought up, I brought it up too. Like he's on a bad team. You know what, though? That the bad team's still going to win, 60, 70 games? The bad teams win the games by a run or two. So there's all those save chances. Sometimes the Dodgers closers, they're going to win, 50, 60 of their games by 4 or 5 runs. So, maybe not as many save opportunities for those teams. But, you can find good closers for saves on bad teams just because they're going to be in more close games, too. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and that's where you kind of get away from the ADT. That's a security code. ADP hype, because closers can be found late, and especially on those bad teams, because you can always try and get your James Karinchak. And what happens if Nick Wickran gets the closer role there? Suddenly you're without a closer, and hey, look who's on the wire.
Right.
Rodriguez. And suddenly you pick him up. I mean, last year, Trevor Rosenthal, he didn't start as the closer, and he became a closer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's at least 15 guys that don't start as a closer that will end as a closer every year. So
probably more.
Yeah. There's not really anything else to say on Rich Rod. So we'll just go into the fact that clearly this team is void of talent. I mean, is there basically one, maybe two prospects that you like that could potentially come up this season to make some noise?
Yeah, you prepped me for that, and I was like, I don't even know if I can find this season. Two players that I rostered.
2023.
If it is nobody, it's a totally perfectly acceptable answer, dude.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I have rostered in Dynasty Leagues. One, of course, is the most fabulously named Travis Swaggerty.
Yes, yep. So do I.
I mean, we're looking at 2019, high A ball, 10 home runs, 23 stolen bases, 120 weighted runs created plus. I mean, that's looking nice. He's 23 years old, so he's about average for that station. So, I mean, Fangraphs has him as a 50 prospect. He's got to move quick. The other person that I have stanned for a long time, probably too long, is Will Craig. Will Craig did get his cup of coffee with 4 plate appearances last year. 2019, he had 23 home runs in AAA, 70 runs, 80 RBI, rounding up. Pretty bland as far as it goes. The Pirates literally have, I mean, outside of Brian Hayes, maybe Brian Reynolds, and of course Todd the Bod, not a lot. So if we can see Will Craig come up a third of the year, hey, that's cool. You can roster him at the end. Cheap power, Yoshi Tsutsugo, same concept, except he doesn't walk very much. Instead of 3 true outcomes, it's 2 true outcomes: home run, strikeout.
Speaking of Todds, and we've talked to the Bod and Jones now. I mean, isn't Todd Jones basically the prototypical person that SNL's Drunk Uncle was made after? I mean, that's what I think of when I think of Todd Jones. Just this, he's not going to run out there from the bullpen because he just doesn't run. He's going to saunter his way out there, flexing his stash, and his stash is pretty similar to the one on your Super Troopers beer can from earlier. So
hell yeah,
I do remember Mr. Jones and his
changes
all of his glory,
the whole
I guess.
show.
And Garrett Cole touching his cap for the pine tar, Todd
just a little bit. Michael Pineda learned from the best. What can I say?
All right, let's finish up here with the St. Louis Cardinals making probably the biggest splash of the offseason, and new to the team, Nolan Arenado. I mean, this is it. This is all we got to talk about. It's the only addition, but it's the biggest addition of the entire offseason. How does Arenado perform now that he's not in Colorado, and people were, sort of down on him after last season in the first place? Like, his ADP is rounds lower than it has been in 3 years. I mean, I feel like this is a massive steal in drafts, but it's just, I'm not grabbing him either for some reason, because I just seem to be grabbing a third baseman before he goes. But what's your thoughts on Arenado now that he's in St. Louis?
Yeah, so Arenado is going to be one of those volatile players that either makes or breaks your team. And that's that's the headline right there. When Arenado got traded, the internal discussion at Rasball was Rudy put it into his projections, and it looked remarkably similar to Austin Riley of Atlanta, who's going, 150 to 200 picks later.
Wow.
Gray's got him still as his number 27 overall player. Like, massive difference.
Yeah.
Make or break your team. So when I, in Raz Slam, saw him going to round 5, I see basically a batter that knows how to make contact. We're seeing outside of 2020, BABIP's above 300 for the past 3 years, batting average around 300, slugging percentages above 560. Huge. The guy knows how to make contact. He doesn't strike out. Even last year, 2020, when he had a down year, 10% K rate. Who has a 10% K rate?
This is a phenomenal hitter. I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
Absolutely phenomenal hitter. The guy knows how to hit. 2020 was an aberration. St. Louis is not the greatest hitter's ballpark. And we saw kind of what it did to Paul Goldschmidt. It's not great. But at the same time, I'm taking him as a upside third baseman. I took him in Raz Slam Industry. And again, I'm the guy who wrote the quote-unquote how to draft hitters in Raz Slam article. And I took him in the 5th round. I am confident enough for even the most casual 12-team, 10-team, 8-team fantasy baseball player that you should trust Nolan Arenado.
Yeah. His stats are there. I get it. He played in Colorado. He's got that the air up there, factor. No, the guy can hit the ball. He's a good player regardless. If you just look at his splits alone, okay, yeah, well, his home splits over his career, definitely a much better average, but it's just he still can mash the ball. His homers are still there versus home and away. It's not a huge drop off there. The runs
Not
are
as
still
most
there.
Colorado hitters. No, you're right.
Well, yeah. Exactly. It's like if you can leave Colorado and still mash, nearly 100 homers. Okay, well, that's not too terrible to follow up with when you have 130 plus in Colorado. The stats are there. I definitely like Arenado. I probably would be looking at him around that 5-6 time frame. If he's not grabbed. Some of my leagues I could see people just going after the name value and not necessarily paying attention to last year and just going after it. But if he's still there, I don't have a problem taking him at all.
Yeah, I've got him up at 44 overall, so I'm a little higher than some. But there's also a ton of people, that got him up at, in the high teens, 20s, and 30s. So I actually, now that I look at it on Fantasy Pros, I'm kind of in the middle. But he's a guy that I'm pretty interested in. If I don't grab one of those, top 3 or 4 guys, it's just a guy who I can count on for at least power. You're not going to get any steals from him. But let's jump over to this lineup here, and we've got Tommy Edman right now projected to be number 1 overall. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Paul DeJong, Dylan Carlson, Yadier Molina, Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader. And then the starting rotation, we got Jack Flaherty, Kwang Hun Kim, Adam Wainwright, Carlos Martinez, and then Daniel Ponce de Leon. That's a mouthful. If I can steal AJ's intro thing there. So, yeah, first question here.
Great explorer. Great explorer.
As Paul Goldschmidt, look, he's not the MVP candidate, we've had years ago. But, even when he was an MVP candidate, he was still a good, solid fantasy producer. Last year was not that guy. He dropped like a rock. I mean, now that he's got a little bit of extra lineup protection with Arenado looking like he's going to bat behind him, are we expecting a bounce back season from Goldschmidt?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer, I think he's going to be just fine. We're probably looking at a player, and I don't mean to sell this too much because I've already talked him up, Miguel Cabrera. Was just a very good, consistent player overall. He wasn't always the number one player, but you knew what you were getting with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember this until I was doing an off-season article on Robbie Ray, who used to be with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and is, after a couple trades is now in the one trade is actually with the Toronto Blue Jays. Robbie Ray back in 2017 was hit in the head with a line drive, and I was like, oh. I looked at his Fangraphs statements, and he was actually like in the top 30 of WAR for a 3-year period. And I looked at the Diamondbacks, his team at that time, and it was loaded. Paul Goldschmidt, when he was with the Diamondbacks, was hitting in a nice, well-built lineup. This is the time when Zach Greinke was there. Patrick Corbin was there. At one time, J.D. Martinez was in the Diamondbacks lineup. Goldschmidt was hitting those first-round, first base fantasy returns with a loaded lineup. The Cardinals weren't exactly, the 2017, 2018 Diamondbacks lineup. And so when he kind of came over, there's a fair amount of younger players. I mean, there's some tumult. A couple players had moved around. Of course, we're talking about different starting rotations. And so Goldschmidt comes in 2019. We can see he's got 34 home runs, 682 plate appearance, 260 batting average. Again, batting average is wonky, but below career average. And we see last year, pretty unimpressive, 6 home runs and 231 plate appearances. But we're seeing the walk rate increase up to 16, which is median with his career average. Lowest K percentage of his career. ISO, not great, lowest of his career. But still overall a productive offensive batter. Mm-hmm. Talking about a guy who knows how to hit. He's 33. Again, I'm in the Minnesota market. Nelson Cruz is our savior. Paul Goldschmidt and very well hold on to hitting some dongs for the next 10 years and fill out that contract. Am I taking him anywhere near his previous value? No. But a lot of people are looking at him in the 100s to 150 range. Especially if you're in Roto 12-team leagues, stuff like that, I think he returns the value. If you're in a tournament, he's much more a floor play. I think we've seen his prime, and I think he's going to kind of sit around his projections of sort of that 23 to 28 home runs for a couple of years now. Hopefully, if Arenado comes in, gives him a little boost, things get back to normal, we can see sort of a Nelson Cruz-style late career resurgence where a couple of years just don't mean anything, and they're back to making dongs.
Yeah, Paul Jadongs. I mean, Goldschmidt, like Todd the Bot, is another baseball man crush of mine for many years. And I was all over grabbing him. Well, in more ways than one, but I still went after him when he came to St. Louis because I just didn't care. I was like, you know what? It's my dude. I'm going after him. I like where he's at. I'm going to make it happen. And he just didn't follow through. And I was very disappointed. And it was what it was. But again, the age is creeping up. And we talked about Arenado, hopefully not turning into Paul Goldschmidt. But he's almost 4 years younger. So he's still in more of his prime, I feel like, than Goldschmidt when he arrived there. But they're both similar hitters. in the fact that they're valuable, and you just got to play to what they are now. So I still like Goldie. I mean, he's not in, like you said, the best lineup as it is from where he was coming from. I mean, that lineup was ridiculous that he had around him. You know, you come to a different stadium and not as much of a hitter's ballpark and not as many hitters around you. Yeah, shit's going to go downhill for you a little bit, but I still like him. So moving on, I think I've gushed enough about the Goldie. Jack Flaherty pretty much had an up and down season last year. All right, finally I get somebody to talk about who had somewhat of an up season. Mixed good with bad starts. You know, 2 of his last 5 starts were just garbage, though. You know, 3 innings pitched in 9 earned runs, 3 earned runs, and 2 2/3. I mean, it's just, that's not good. That's not helping your teams at all. His previous 2 seasons were pretty great, though. So can we chalk up last year to the hashtag 2020 crowd, or is there some actual concern here with Flaherty?
You know, I'm so happy when I loaded up your discussion points list that you had Flaherty here, because he is my dark horse candidate for fantasy starting pitcher 1 of 2020.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think, you know, I'm not putting him the majority chance. I'm putting the majority chance on Aaron Nola, median chance Yu Darvish, but I think the value chance at being SP1 is Jack Flaherty. When you look at particularly last year, when you sort by the expected FIP, which is again not necessarily accurate of performance, you know, it's basically minus home runs. We see Jack Flaherty has the biggest discrepancy between his expected fielding independent pitching and his actual ERA. His expected fielding FIP 3.42, ERA 4.91. That's a run and a half. The next closest was Tyler Glasnow, who had a 1.25 difference between his expected FIP and ERA. And then a lot of other pitchers were pretty close. So we're seeing a massive amount of poor luck. When you look at his launch angle, particularly, I believe, you know, I've written a lot of pitchers. I'm the pitcher guy at Rasball, so a lot of things bleed together. His launch angle, 9.3%, 3% last year. Yet he had 1.34 home runs per 9. It was ridiculously more than his nearest launch angle comps. We're basically seeing a low barrel percentage, 6.9%, way lower than Shane Bieber. Hard hit percent, 31.4 last year. In this bad year where he nearly had a 5 ERA, he had a 31.4 hard hit percentage. That's 15% lower than Shane Bieber. That is nuts. Is ridiculous. The guy maintained for the 3rd straight year 10 point, X K per 9. He had 10.93. It was actually the highest of his career. And as you pointed out, AJ, he had that 3-inning pitch, 9 earned run massacre against the Milwaukee Brewers, who had just been no-hit by Alec Mills. And I kid you not, most any of us go out there and throw nearly as hard as Alec Mills, and that is not hyperbole. The guy has a 65-mile-per-hour curveball. Alec Mills somehow no-hit the Brewers, and I think for some reason Jack Flaherty didn't have his stuff on, and he was doing bad against the Brewers, and they left him in to sort of like make a point. Several times to the media that
deal with it.
Just didn't feel it last year. I am full on 100% by Jack Flaherty. Do not be afraid. Stonks to the moon. Mad money. Go for it.
Yeah, I like Flaherty a lot. You got to realize that some of the, like, especially with that 9-inning game, like, or 9-run game, like, that was such an outlier. If you get rid of that, his ERA drops dramatically. but I see people trying to avoid him. I've got him around SB, I think 10 on my list right now, but I could easily slide him up a couple. I use a lot of projections to build my rankings. That's just kind of where he fell. But I could easily put him up in front of like Castillo and Bueller and things like that. But that's where he falls behind right now. I like him a lot, and if I get him right in that range, he's kind of like that end of the second tier that I love, and then it kind of like just falls from there. And I'm kind of like, I'll take, if I get my second pitcher, my SP1 down below, they're all kind of the same in that next group. But he's that end right now, the end of the second tier for me that I like a lot. So big fan of his. Last question here, and just so because I've seen him get drafted, in my opinion, way higher than I think he should. But Tommy Edman, the eligibility, I think, is just carrying his value way higher than it should. I get it, second base, third base, shortstop, outfield, depending on what league you're in. He's got a mix of those four. I mean, 141 ADP, I get it. Like, that's sort of late, but I don't know. If you believe in him, you need to sell me on Tommy Edman. But I'm not a believer in this guy. I think he's just a dude. Like, I can get somebody like him in round 20-ish.
Yeah, I mean, so it all depends on your type of build. And, we're seeing multi-position eligibility like Todd the Bod. And if you're looking for somebody who can get steals, sure, Tommy Edman can get steals. We see huge variation year on year of what he does do, though, kind of. I mean, 2018 combined, I should say 30 steals, 27, 2019, or I can do math better, 24 in 2019, and 2 in 2020 in 227 plate appearances. 250 batting average. So what? He was on base 50 times, 2 stolen bases. That's not thrilling. Negative, I should say, negative 0.3 base runs scored. He's not running necessarily smart last year. If you're one of those, I mean, I should say we see all the projections, 10-ish, 13-ish home runs and 13-ish stolen bases. That's like, oh yeah, okay. Baseball season is what, 25, 26 weeks long? That's 1 stolen base every 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
That's not thrilling. That's not going to really change the needle in a roto or head-to-head categories, especially at third base, or if you roster him at second base. I mean, Nick Madrigal, in theory, should be stealing twice that much.
Maybe more.
It's not exciting. It's a desperation move to balance out at the end of a roster building. And I think you're missing out on some other great options. And it's sort of one of those things that if you overbuilt perhaps in low average, high power corners, you take Edman to put at a weird position at the end of the draft and hope that he steals a bunch of bases and you YOLO it.
Yeah, he has gone way earlier than the end of my draft in every single league. I'll tell you, granted, it's a best ball league, and so I get the position flexibility in that one for RassSlam, which obviously you guys run. I get it. The position eligibility and flexibility there in RassSlam, it's a little bit different, so that helps tremendously. He went 9.1. No. Like, there's so many guys after him that are going to score twice as many points as Tommy Edman. Like, no way. I took Ian Happ after Edman. Fun. Bye. Like, no chance. I kind of bought into the hype of Edman last year, and I think I took him in RassSlam. I don't know if it was ninth round, but I quickly learned that he's just a guy, in fantasy. Like, he's just your average player who just happens to have 4 position eligibilities that helps him, but it's not super useful when it comes to trying to set a lineup. Like, he's not really helping you anywhere. He's not hurting you anywhere, but he's not helping you. And that's the thing.
If you're in a points league, we have a secret Raz Slam spreadsheet, and I can tell you right now, Tommy Edman is not above his ADP. He's lower than ADP.
Yeah.
So if you're in a points league, it is not an advantage to take him early. It is a disadvantage. And if you're in Roto, again, just kind of as I previously said, you're YOLOing it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Things that Tommy Edman does have that Todd the Bod does not. A couple more positions of eligibility. But things that he does not have, a 2015 Home Run Derby championship in his home ballpark. So, sorry, Edman, you're out.
And AJ just proved that he's a man crush once again. It's Todd the Bod. All right, so let's finish off here.
He's Todd the Bod.
Let's finish off here, Blair, with our standings prediction for the NL Central, and we'll let you go first, man. What you got?
Oh man, I didn't even see this on the sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I put it on there.
I mean,
crap! We got to do this again.
Can any of the teams even finish above 500? Probably.
It'll be close. It will be close.
They're all going to just tie.
Yeah.
No, they won't. The Pirates and the Reds will not tie anybody.
I mean, so I live in Brewers country, but I consider myself a Twins fan because I grew up in Minneapolis. But I'm over here across the border in Wisconsin, and technically a Brewers / Packers, infidel. And
infidel.
I mean, I'm going to give, of course, Pirates at the absolute bottom. That's a absolute gimme. I'm going to work my way up. That's a gimme. Pirates at the bottom. I don't think the Cubs really have enough to sustain a long-term stretch. I think they're going to be good on paper, but not great in real life. I'm going to put them fourth. I'm going to put the Reds third. Brewers, of course, Christian Yelich, resurgence power second, and then Cardinals are going to be first.
Just flashing his Cardinals shirt. You guys can't see that. I'm Poppy in here, Jeff. Flash it. Yeah,
there it is.
All
Jersey
right,
pop.
AJ, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I like here.
No, it's not. It's supposed
Cards,
to be not like. It's just projections for standings.
I would say Cards. I'm gonna just say the Cubbies are gonna find a way to somehow
that pitching
beat out the Brewers. I know they suck, but there's enough power in those bats that maybe David Bodie becomes my new man crush. So Cubs are 2.
2016 Orioles that made the playoffs or whatever it was, whatever year it was.
Why not?
With no pitching.
Exactly. Hey, blind squirrel, man. Blind squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
Brew Crew 3, 1.5 behind the Cubbies. Reds, Pirates.
Yeah, so I've got Cardinals 1, Brew Crew 2. I can see those two flipping very easily. I got Cubs and Reds 3 and 4. I can see those two flipping pretty easily. Pirates are dead last by a mile. They're gonna race for the first pick with the Orioles and the Marlins. I feel like so.
Hey, Marlins were a playoff team.
I get it, but I don't see that repeating.
Just saying.
All right. Blair, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was very late notice, so definitely appreciate it. Let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and what you got going on this season.
So I'm at everywhere Blair, just as you imagine it being spelled. And if you're somebody who spells Blair with an E, you're an awful person. BLAIR. Everywhere Blair. I'm primary. I'm an editor and pitcher guy at Razzball. I do football as well. We'll be doing football throughout the off season. You'll see that once kind of baseball draft season wraps up, because Donkey Teeth and I are a little bit busy with all of that.
Yeah.
And then I also do the AL Central for Pitcher List and Across the Seams for Pitcher List.
Nice, man.
Awesome. That's Blair with a B as in boy, not glare with an E as in fucking gone.
By the way, don't ever search on Twitter Blair Williams, because I was trying to find you tonight. When we found out that it was you coming on. And needless to say, it's not safe for work material that pops up on Twitter. When you search for just your name, there is a bow chicka bow wow artist out there that
spelling it with
has your name. So
and I strongly feel that's why I never got a job in academia.
I was gonna ask,
man, you search your name, it's like, who the hell? I was like, Jeff, what's his Twitter handle? I can't find it. It's buried under all this other stuff that I don't really feel like looking at right now.
Well, that's what I tell all the Rasball guys. Is like, hey, if you want to know about me, just ask. Just don't Google me.
No, you can't, dude. It's like, that was kind of funny to find out. So, good time tonight, man. Definitely have to get you on again. This was a great conversation, but we will let you go and we'll close out the show. Have a good night, man.
Thanks so much. Have a great.
Man. Good chatting.
All right, AJ. I successfully finished both of these, so it's been a good night. I had fun. So
my second was a Bear Republic Independent Brewing Racer 5 IPA, 7.5. So I finally bumped it up a little bit.
I went up to the 10 spot with a triple. It's a screw the 6.9. And to make that up. So
pop them. I'm gonna just grab the growler and just
do it.
Done.
All right.
50.
Let's close it out, man. Next week we're finishing our division previews with the NL West, and we will check y'all out next Thursday.